She needs to be sanitized before she goes back in the water.
Marjorie Whittaker shouted, one gloved hand gripping the spray bottle like a weapon. The sharp chemical scent hit me first. Bleach, raw and biting. My daughter Ava stood frozen at the edge of the pool, droplets running down her arms as the mist touched her skin. The kids nearby went silent. "Pool hygiene rules," Marjorie barked again, her HOA badge glinting in the sun. "You people think your rules don't apply?" The sound of Ava's cry tore through the quiet before my mind caught up. My hands were on her shoulders in seconds, pulling her back, shielding her from the next spray. "What the hell are you doing?" I snapped. "That's a child, not a contaminated surface." Marjorie just smirked, lowering the bottle with the self-righteous calm of someone who believed she was untouchable. "I'm protecting community health, Mr. Rowe. If you don't like it, take it up at the next board meeting." My voice stayed low, cold. "You just used industrial bleach on my daughter." I reached for the bottle, flipping the label so the neighbors could see the bold print. Disinfectant, pool chemical concentrate. Not for direct contact. Her eyes widened for a flicker of a second before she snatched it back. If you've ever watched someone justify cruelty with a smile, you know that look. The kind that says they believe the rules will protect them more than the truth ever could. And if you've ever had to stand between your child and that kind of power, you already know why I won't let this go. Subscribe now, because what happens next didn't just change one family's summer. It changed an entire neighborhood. My name's Ethan Rowe. I design water safety systems for a living, municipal pools, filtration units, chemical regulation. I've spent 15 years making sure other people's kids never come near what mine just did. I didn't move to Lakeshore Reserve for status or views. I moved here because my wife, Lauren, needed peace after years on the force. She's a detective, methodical, precise, tougher than anyone I've met. We wanted normal weekends, quiet evenings, maybe some neighborhood barbecues. Instead, we got Marjorie Whittaker, the self-declared pool safety director, who treats a community pool like a private kingdom. Ava's still trembling against my chest, the smell of chlorine burning my nose. "Daddy, it stings," she whispers, voice small. I see the pale patches rising on her arm, and I know exactly what that means. Bleach burns. Lauren sprinting across the deck, badge still on her belt from the shift she just ended. The look on her face could have frozen time. Marjorie lifts her chin. "Your daughter was out of compliance. Non-approved swimwear. We've had reports of contamination from sunscreen residues. I followed procedure." Procedure, that word. I've heard it in every safety hearing, every post-incident review. The last defense of people who know they've gone too far. Procedure. "Doesn't authorize you to assault children," Lauren says evenly, her hand resting just above her holster. Not as a threat, but a reminder that law doesn't end at the property line. The crowd murmurs. Neighbors glance away. No one steps forward. Here's what people don't realize about HOA power. It isn't built on rules. It's built on silence. People keep quiet because it's easier than confrontation. But I've seen what silence costs. The pool was supposed to be a symbol of community for Ava, her therapy space after the accident 2 years ago that left her terrified of open water. It took months of gentle encouragement, doctors, and patience to get her to swim again. And now this. Bleach burns and fear. All because someone needed to prove authority. I look down at my daughter's small hand gripping mine, the same hand I used to guide through every safety drill, every step of recovery. She trusted me to keep her safe, and right now, that trust feels like a promise I'm seconds away from breaking. Marjorie's still talking, something about maintenance standards and liability protection. But I'm not listening anymore. I'm watching the label on that bottle, the way she hides it behind her clipboard. My mind starts cataloging details like a reflex. The concentration mark, the storage code, the hazard symbols. I already know what's coming. I don't raise my voice. I don't threaten her. I just meet her eyes and say, "Marjorie, I wrote the safety manual for that chemical." The silence after that lands heavier than the stench of bleach. Even Lauren looks at me, knowing what that means. Because if there's one thing I understand better than anyone in this neighborhood, it's that bleach in the wrong hands isn't just dangerous. It's evidence. The silence at the pool didn't last. By the time Lauren had Ava wrapped in a towel and I'd called an ambulance, Marjorie Whittaker was already on her phone, her voice sharp and professional. "There's no need for overreaction," she said to the dispatcher, as if burns and bleach were a matter of opinion. The paramedics confirmed what I already knew: minor chemical burns. They left us with creams, warnings, and a report number. Lauren filed an incident record with the local precinct that night, careful to keep it procedural, detached, as if our child weren't the victim. That's what protocol demanded, and protocol was the one thing keeping us from detonating. The next morning, an HOA envelope waited on our porch, folded crisp like a dare. Notice of temporary pool access suspension. Family of Ethan Rowe. The reason? Contamination event pending investigation. Beneath it, a fine, $1,500, for chemical interference and public disturbance. No signature, just the HOA letterhead and Marjorie's initials. I stared at the print until the letters blurred. Lauren looked over my shoulder, calm in that dangerous way she gets before an arrest. "She's building a paper trail," she said. "If we push too hard now, it looks retaliatory." I almost laughed. "She assaulted our daughter with bleach. Retaliatory doesn't begin to cover it." We walked to the clubhouse later that afternoon, the smell of chlorine still lingering in my clothes. The boardroom looked like every HOA office I'd ever seen. Framed bylaws, a dusty flag, and people who mistake authority for wisdom. Marjorie sat at the center, a cup of herbal tea steaming beside her. Her tone was smooth, practiced. "Mr. and Mrs. Rowe, I understand emotions are high, but we have to ensure community safety. Our water quality logs are clear, no irregularities." I met her eyes. "Those logs are falsified. I saw the concentration firsthand. You're using pool-grade bleach without dilution." She smiled thinly. "We follow vendor guidelines." Behind her, I noticed a man shifting uneasily in the corner, Ben Carter, the maintenance worker. He looked at me once and quickly away, like someone who'd seen too much and said too little. His fingers drummed on a clipboard, restless, guilty. I filed that away for later. Marjorie leaned back. "Ethan, I suggest we avoid exaggerations. You have no authority over HOA chemical standards. Your background doesn't make you our inspector." That was the first lie that almost made me laugh. My background didn't make me her inspector. It made me her worst nightmare. Lauren's voice cut through the air, precise. "We're not here to debate titles. We're here because an adult sprayed bleach at a child. That's assault, whether you print your own badge or not." A board member coughed, uncomfortable. Marjorie folded her hands. "The incident was unfortunate, but I've spoken to legal counsel. Our position is that it was a safety procedure gone wrong, not a criminal act." That was when I realized the depth of it. She wasn't just arrogant, she was insulated. The system that should protect residents was built to protect her. The rules, the fines, the paperwork, they were armor, and unless someone outside the walls looked closely, the bleach on Ava's skin would vanish into the chlorine mist of procedure. On our way out, Ben caught my arm near the vending machine. His voice was a whisper. "She's not supposed to mix that stuff herself. It's supposed to come pre-diluted." He stopped, glanced toward the hall, then lowered his head. "I've got to go." I didn't press him, not yet. There was fear in his eyes, the kind that doesn't come from guilt alone. It comes from dependence. People like Ben kept jobs like that by keeping quiet. That night, after Ava was asleep, I sat at the kitchen table surrounded by printouts, chemical codes, regulation sheets, safety manuals I'd written myself. Lauren leaned on the counter, watching me. "You're not letting this go, are you?" I shook my head. "No, and neither should the Department of Environmental Health." She nodded once, the flicker of a smile breaking through the exhaustion. "Then we do it right. Every step. No emotion, no shortcuts." She was right. If I wanted justice, it couldn't come from outrage. It had to come from authority that even Marjorie's titles couldn't manipulate. The kind that arrives with clipboards, gloves, and warrants. Outside, the pool lights flickered across the lawn, bright and cold. The water looked clean again, still and perfect under the moonlight. But I knew better than to trust clear water. Sometimes purity is just what corruption looks like when it's confident enough to hide in plain sight. The next morning, I was back at the pool before sunrise. The mist hovered low over the water, silver in the half-light, the kind of calm that only shows up right before chaos. I wasn't there to swim. I wanted to see who maintained the place when no one was watching. Sure enough, Ben Carter appeared a few minutes later, pushing the supply cart across the deck. He moved like a man who had learned to make himself small, head down, shoulders rounded, steps measured. Every motion said he didn't want to be seen. He froze when he noticed me. "Pool's closed," he muttered without looking up. "I know," I said quietly. "You start early." He nodded, unlocking the storage shed with a trembling key. The sound of metal scraping against metal was louder than it should have been. Inside, I caught a glimpse of stacked containers, some labeled, some not. My stomach twisted. Industrial-grade bleach, the kind that requires a safety permit. I didn't need to read the numbers. I'd memorized them years ago. Ben noticed my gaze and shut the door quickly. "You're not supposed to be here," he said. His voice was low, defensive, but his eyes betrayed something else, fear mixed with shame. "I'm not here to get you in trouble," I told him, "but you know what happened to my daughter. You saw it." He swallowed hard, the Adam's apple jerking in his throat. I didn't see anything. His hands fidgeted with the zipper of his vest, pulling it up and down in nervous half motions. He couldn't stand still. "You didn't stop her either," I said. "And that means you've been watching this kind of thing for a while." He didn't answer. His eyes darted toward the clubhouse window, where a faint movement of blinds betrayed someone watching. Maybe Marjorie. Maybe paranoia. Either way, he stepped closer and whispered, "She told me to keep quiet. Said it was protocol. Said she'd fire me if I made her look bad." "That's not protocol," I said, keeping my tone calm. "That's criminal negligence." He rubbed the back of his neck, leaving streaks of white powder from the chemical dust. His posture collapsed a little, like the words had weight. "You don't get it, man. She's got everyone scared. The board listens to her, not me. I just do what I'm told." I wanted to push harder, but I recognized the look. Cornered guilt mixed with dependence. He wasn't my enemy. He was part of the system that kept her powerful. I softened my voice. "Ben, what she's doing isn't just wrong. It's going to hurt someone worse next time. Maybe a kid who doesn't get treated fast enough. Maybe you breathing that stuff every morning." His eyes flicked toward the shed again. For a second, I thought he might open it and show me everything. Instead, he took a shaky breath and said, "I can't. Not yet." "Then just keep it safe," I said. "Whatever records you have, logs, reports, don't destroy them. One day soon, someone's going to ask for them, and you'll want to be on the right side of that moment." He looked at me for a long time, then nodded once. It wasn't a promise, but it was a beginning. His shoulders relaxed a little, though his hands still trembled. "You really think she'll get caught?" I met his eyes. "I don't think it. I know it." When I walked back home, the sky was brightening and the sprinklers were already on. Each misting arc across the manicured lawns smelled faintly of bleach, and that detail hit me harder than it should have. She wasn't just reckless, she was methodical. Every illusion of cleanliness in this place had her fingerprints on it. Lauren was waiting by the porch, a mug of coffee in hand. "You talked to him," she said. "Yeah, he's cracking." "Good," she said. "Let him. Pressure makes truth surface faster than guilt ever will." I nodded, watching the droplets glint off the pool fence in the distance. "She's hiding more than bad judgment. The concentration levels she's using could violate state code." Lauren's eyes sharpened. "Meaning?" "Meaning," I said, "the Department of Environmental Health has jurisdiction. She won't see that coming." That was the first time I saw the shape of the plan forming clearly. I wasn't just a father anymore. I was the one person in this entire neighborhood who could turn her obsession into her downfall. And I already had her weakest link trembling under the weight of his own conscience. Lauren's words stayed with me the whole day. Pressure makes truth surface faster than guilt ever will. It wasn't just a warning, it was a strategy. And pressure was the one thing Marjorie Whittaker had never experienced inside her little empire. I decided it was time to change that. That afternoon, I returned from work to find an envelope taped to our door. No postage, no signature. Inside, another notice. Continued violation of community standards, failure to comply with safety audit request. Below that, a $500 late fee and a printed photo of our backyard fence. Apparently, the water runoff from my sprinklers had potentially contaminated the HOA landscaping. Lauren stood behind me, reading over my shoulder. "She's baiting you. I said, she wants you to lash out, make a mistake. I folded the paper carefully. Then she's about to be disappointed. But her game wasn't just paper fines anymore. When I logged into the HOA portal that evening, I found a red flag next to my name. Community access revoked. That meant no pool, no clubhouse, no community events. The digital equivalent of exile. Ava's favorite place, the one spot she'd felt brave again, was now off limits. It was almost surgical, the way Marjorie cut people out without ever raising her voice. She didn't have to scream. Her weapon was procedure. The next HOA meeting was mandatory for all residents. She made sure of that. The email invitation came with attendance required to maintain voting eligibility. I showed up early, sitting near the back of the room in a folding chair that wobbled on one leg. Lauren couldn't attend. She was on shift, but her absence probably made Marjorie feel safer. The meeting began with her usual tone, soft authority wrapped in community language. We all want Lakeshore Reserve to remain the cleanest, safest neighborhood in the county, she said. But that requires accountability from everyone. She clicked the projector remote and a slide appeared, a picture of me standing near the pool fence. Certain residents have repeatedly violated our maintenance policies. Unauthorized chemical testing, interference with HOA operations, and false allegations against staff. The murmurs started immediately. Neighbors whispered, eyes darting toward me. Some looked sympathetic, others uncertain. Karen's real talent wasn't leadership. It was manipulation. She could twist self-defense into rebellion with a PowerPoint. When she opened the floor for questions, I stood. You mentioned unauthorized testing. Would you like to clarify how testing pool water for safety violates community standards? Her smile didn't reach her eyes. You're not licensed under HOA protocol. You're not an inspector. I'm a water safety engineer, I said evenly. I helped write the state regulation your pool is currently violating. That got a few heads turning. Ben was in the corner again, taking notes like always, but his pen trembled just slightly. Marjorie crossed her legs, pretending calm. That's quite an accusation, Mr. Rowe. Are you suggesting our community operates outside the law? I didn't blink. No, I'm suggesting that you do. A ripple moved through the room. For a split second, she faltered, then regained composure. This meeting isn't the place for personal grievances. Let's move on. But the damage was done. She knew I wasn't backing down, and worse, she knew people were starting to question her. When the meeting ended, Ben lingered behind, stacking chairs with his usual quiet efficiency. I approached slowly. His hands were shaking again, though he tried to hide it by keeping them busy. She's pushing harder, I said. He glanced around the empty room, lowering his voice. You shouldn't have said that in public. She'll come after you now. She already has, I replied, but I think she's about to make her first real mistake. He swallowed, eyes flicking toward the door. I don't want to get fired. Then don't, I said softly. Just do your job. Take photos of everything you mix, everything you sign, every chemical you're told to use. Keep them for yourself, not for me. Ben didn't answer right away. Then he nodded once, a small, trembling movement. I'll try. On the walk home, the night air felt heavy, humid, carrying the faint sting of chlorine even from blocks away. It wasn't just in the pool, it was in the soil, the sprinklers, the air. That was her illusion of control. Make everything smell clean so no one questions what's poisoning them. When I reached our porch, Lauren was waiting again, her expression unreadable. How bad? She asked. She turned the meeting into a show trial, I said, but people are starting to see through it. Lauren leaned against the railing, the faint blue light from the pool reflecting in her eyes. Good. Let her double down. That's when bureaucrats slip. I smiled, exhausted but resolute. She's already slipping. She just doesn't know it yet. Because every accusation, every fine, every lie she stacked on my name was becoming part of a record, one that, when seen by the right agency, would dismantle everything she built. And when that day came, it wouldn't be a shouting match or a revenge scene. It would be an arrest warrant read over the very water she thought she controlled. By the next morning, the tension in Lakeshore Reserve was thick enough to taste. Neighbors waved a little less. Conversations stopped when I walked by. Marjorie's message board posts, usually about landscaping tips or community recipes, had turned passive-aggressive, full of phrases like, residents who endanger our families, and unauthorized chemical interference. It was subtle, but everyone knew who she meant. Lauren told me to let it roll off, but she also knew I wouldn't. I couldn't. Ava's arm still had faint marks from that day at the pool, pale streaks that darkened whenever she spent too long in the sun. They were reminders, tiny scars of authority misused. I took my coffee and walked toward the lake behind the subdivision. The HOA couldn't touch this area. It belonged to the city. That made it the one place I could think clearly. The water was still, the surface mirroring the sky so perfectly it looked fake. I sat on the old fishing dock with my notebook, flipping through copies of the pool's maintenance records I'd printed before access was revoked. They were supposed to log chlorine levels daily. Instead, I found entries copy-pasted with identical numbers across 3 months. Impossible in any real test scenario. That's when I realized this wasn't laziness. It was deliberate falsification. Someone had built a clean record on paper to hide a toxic one in reality. And I knew exactly who. I called the only person who could help me make it official. Dr. Singh, my former supervisor at the county's environmental safety office. He'd spent years auditing municipal water systems. When I told him what I'd found, he paused. "You're saying they're manually dosing with concentrated bleach?" "Yes," I said, "and covering it with false log entries." He exhaled through the phone. "That's not just a violation. That's a public health hazard. If you can get me verifiable samples, time-stamped, labeled, I can push it up the chain." That was the opening I needed. I went back home, pulled my portable test kit from the garage, and checked the date on the calibration sticker, still valid. Lauren caught me on my way out the door, raising an eyebrow. "You're testing again?" "Officially, no," I said. "But Dr. Singh needs evidence, real, quantifiable data." She studied me for a moment, then handed me her phone. "Take pictures of everything you test, metadata, timestamps, make it airtight." When I arrived at the pool, the gates were locked, but HOA bylaws required emergency access for safety inspections, and my keycard still worked for maintenance doors. The sun hadn't risen yet. The lights cast sharp white reflections across the water. The place looked serene, clean, perfect. But serenity is just what negligence wears to hide. I crouched by the filter housing, filled the first vial, and capped it tight. Then another. Then a third from the shallow end. The chemical smell hit me harder this time, stronger than chlorine should ever be. My meter blinked red at the first test. 75 parts per million. The legal limit for public pools was 5. I froze for a moment, staring at the number. Not a typo, not a miscalibration, a slow-motion disaster sitting under fluorescent light. I took the rest of the readings, labeling each one carefully. When I turned to leave, I caught a flicker of movement near the shed. Ben. He looked startled to see me, but didn't run. "You're not supposed to be here," he said, voice shaky. "Neither are those numbers," I replied, holding up the test strip. He rubbed his hands together, leaving faint white dust on his palms. "She made me log the same readings every day, said consistency builds confidence." His voice cracked a little on the word confidence. "You're not just logging numbers, Ben. You're covering for her crimes." He looked down, jaw tightening. "I know." He hesitated, then whispered, "But if I talk, she'll ruin me. I've got 2 kids, man." I stepped closer. "If this gets out, and it will, the inspectors won't come for you. They'll come for whoever ordered you to falsify reports. You have a chance to protect yourself, and your kids, before this blows." "Up," Ben nodded weakly. "I'll think about it." That was enough for now. When I got home, I uploaded the readings, photographs, and timestamps into a shared folder for Dr. Singh. My hands trembled as I typed the last label. Lakeshore Reserve Pool. Unlawful concentration levels. Witness pending. Lauren glanced over my shoulder as the files synced. "You just built her coffin," she said quietly. "Not yet," I replied, "but I just mixed the cement." Dr. Singh called the next afternoon. "Ethan, the readings you sent aren't just high, they're catastrophic. If those numbers are accurate, that pool's operating at industrial sanitation levels. You could strip paint with that water." His voice was steady, professional, but I heard the tension under it. "I'm forwarding this to environmental health. They'll need an official request for inspection, but your documentation already meets admissible standards." I thanked him and hung up. Lauren was at the kitchen table, reviewing case files. "So?" she asked without looking up. "They're taking it seriously. We'll have inspectors in a week." She finally looked up, her eyes narrowing. "A week? That's 7 days for her to bury evidence." "I know." She leaned back, thinking. "Then you'd better make sure Ben doesn't cave under pressure." I nodded, already grabbing my keys. Ben lived on the edge of the community, in a smaller single-story rental. The HOA always seemed to forget during inspections. When I knocked, it took him a long time to answer. His eyes were red, and the TV behind him played a muted weather report. "She knows," he said before I could speak. "She came by this morning, asked if anyone had been snooping around the chemical shed, said she trusted my loyalty." He laughed once, bitter. "Loyalty, like it's a safety manual." I stepped inside and shut the door. The air smelled faintly of pool water and disinfectant, like the scent had followed him home. "Ben, listen to me carefully. You need to stop talking to her. Don't text, don't meet, don't respond to any HOA communication except written notices. You're protected if you stay silent." He rubbed his hands together, restless. "Protected how?" "She's got the board behind her. They'll find something. They always do." I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Inside were copies of the logs he'd signed, the chemical codes, the time-stamped photos from my tests. "Not this time. The state will be watching now. When they show up, they'll want one person to tell the truth. That's you. You didn't mix those chemicals. You just followed orders. That distinction matters." He looked at the papers but didn't touch them. "You think they'll believe me?" "They'll have to. The numbers don't lie." He nodded slowly, then walked to the window. His reflection looked smaller than the man I'd met at the pool, a shadow of someone, caught between guilt and fear. "You don't get it, Ethan," he said quietly. "This job's all I've got. I've got 2 kids, rent. If I lose this, I lose everything." "You'll lose more if this goes public and you're on the wrong side of it," I said. "The inspectors aren't coming to punish. They're coming to clean house. Help them, and you'll keep yours." He stared out at the street, where Marjorie's SUV rolled by like clockwork, slow and deliberate. She didn't look toward the house, but we both knew she didn't have to. She was marking her territory. I stayed a while longer, long enough to make sure Ben understood what was at stake. When I finally left, he was sitting at his kitchen table, hands folded, staring at the folder like it might burn through the wood. Lauren called as I reached the corner. "We just got something," she said. "A neighbor reported a strong chemical smell around the playground last night. The runoff drains straight from the pool system." My stomach dropped. "She's overcorrecting," I said, "trying to dilute the water fast before inspection." "That's tampering," Lauren said, "which makes it criminal." We both went silent for a moment, the weight of it sinking in. That night, thunder rolled over the lake, and rain lashed the sidewalks, washing streaks of chemical runoff toward the storm drains. I stood at our window, watching the rain glow faintly under the streetlights, unnatural and too bright. "She's panicking," I said quietly. Lauren joined me, crossing her arms. "Good. Panic makes people sloppy." The next morning, the HOA email blast arrived, emergency pool closure for maintenance and deep sanitation. No apology, no explanation, just a claim of routine safety measures. She thought she could erase the evidence, but bleach doesn't vanish. It leaves traces, in water, in soil, in filters, in lungs. All you need is the right kind of expert to read them. And that was me. I grabbed my briefcase and drove to my office downtown. The lab smelled of copper and ozone, familiar and grounding. I ran the sample I'd kept sealed from the first test, pure, unaltered, dated. The computer displayed the spectrograph within minutes, spikes in sodium hypochlorite towering above safe thresholds. Lauren texted me one sentence. "The inspectors have confirmed their arrival date. Friday. 3 days." That was all it would take for everything she'd built to collapse. When I locked up and walked out to the parking lot, I saw Ben's truck parked across the street. He was sitting inside, engine off, head in his hands. He didn't see me, but he didn't need to. He was already part of the story now, the witness who'd soon decide which side of the law he stood on. I sent Dr. Singh the final report that night, labeling the file the way we did for every confirmed hazard. Active site under investigation. Immediate response required. The first domino had fallen, And by the time the inspectors arrived, the sound of collapse would echo across every inch of Lakeshore Reserve. I didn't sleep that night. The house was silent except for the low hum of the refrigerator and the occasional shuffle from Ava's room. Lauren had already left for an early shift, leaving her badge on the counter, a quiet reminder that law and family weren't separate things anymore. I sat at the table with my laptop open, staring at the report I'd sent to Dr. Singh. It was official now. The inspection was coming, and there was no turning back. By mid-morning, I got a message from an unknown number. Need to talk. Not on phone. Attached was a location pin. The small park at the far end of Lakeshore, near the tennis courts. I didn't have to guess who it was. When I arrived, Ben Carter was sitting on a bench under the old oak tree, hands clasped together, a paper cup of coffee trembling slightly in his grip. He didn't look up when I sat beside him. The air smelled faintly of fertilizer and rain, the ground still damp from last night's storm. "I can't keep this to myself anymore," he said quietly. "She's crossing lines. I never thought she would." I waited, letting him speak on his own terms. He took a shaky breath and looked toward the pool fence visible in the distance. "You were right about the falsified reports. I didn't just sign off on them. I helped her make them. Every week she'd send me the target number for chlorine levels. Said it had to look stable for insurance purposes. If anything fluctuated, she'd have me rewrite the logs before they were uploaded." "Why?" I asked softly. "She said the HOA's insurance premiums depended on perfect safety records," he said. "She was scared of losing coverage after that kid got sick last summer." He swallowed hard. "The doctor said it was a stomach bug, but I know what it was now. Too much chlorine." His fingers twisted the coffee lid until it cracked. "She made me dump extra bleach into the filtration tanks before every inspection. Said it kept the algae away. I told her it was overkill, that we needed balanced pH, but she didn't care. She called it sterilization." He laughed bitterly. "Like she's purging a crime scene instead of cleaning a pool." I watched his hands, every movement jerky, restless, guilt pouring through muscle memory. "Ben, I'm not here to condemn you," I said. "You were doing what you thought you had to do to keep your job." He shook his head. "No, I was doing it because I was afraid. And now a kid's hurt. Your kid. That's on me too." I let that hang in the air for a moment, then said, "You have a chance to make it right. The inspectors will need testimony. If you come forward, you'll be seen as the person who stopped it, not the one who hid it." He rubbed his eyes, exhausted. "You don't know what she's capable of. She keeps a binder. Pictures, personal, notes, things she shouldn't have. It's like leverage on every resident. Fines, complaints, who owes dues. She uses it to control people." That was new. "Where's the binder?" "In her office at the clubhouse," he said. "Top drawer, locked. She calls it her reference book. She makes me update it every month." I exhaled slowly. "If that binder's there, and it contains what you say, that's evidence of coercion. It ties motive to the cover-up." Ben nodded, still staring at the ground. "I made copies of the pool logs on my flash drive, the real ones, with the actual readings before she edited them." He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small USB stick wrapped in electrical tape. "If I give this to you, you have to promise it won't come back on me." "I'll make sure it goes straight to the inspectors," I said. "Chain of custody intact." He hesitated for a long moment before pressing it into my hand. "She's already nervous. She knows something's coming. She told me yesterday, 'We can't afford mistakes, Ben. People are watching.'" "They are," I said quietly. "And soon, so will the state." He gave a shaky nod. "Then I'm done. I can't lie for her anymore." As I walked away, the flash drive felt heavier than it should have, small enough to hide in a pocket, powerful enough to dismantle a regime. The wind carried the faint scent of chlorine from the pool, and for the first time, it didn't make me angry. It made me patient. Lauren texted as I reached the car. "Inspector team confirmed. Arrival advanced to Wednesday. Looks like someone upstairs wants this fast. Perfect timing, because now I had proof, and a witness ready to speak." By Tuesday morning, Lakeshore Reserve looked pristine again. Freshly mowed lawns, trimmed hedges, not a hint of unrest. But I could feel it in the air. The calm before a storm isn't silence. It's the sound of everyone pretending they don't hear thunder. The inspectors would be here in less than 24 hours, and Marjorie Whitaker was acting like the queen hosting a garden party. Her latest community email began with, Transparency and safety remain our top priorities." The irony was almost poetic. Lauren poured coffee beside me, scrolling through her phone. "She just posted photos of herself sanitizing the pool filters," she said. "Gloves, mask, clipboard. She's covering her tracks in real time." "She can clean the surface all she wants," I said, slipping the flash drive from Ben into my laptop. But Bleach doesn't hide data. The files loaded, raw readings, photos of chemical tanks, time-stamped logs, and one picture that made me stop cold. A note from Marjorie taped to the filtration unit. "Add extra bleach for clarity. No one likes cloudy water." Signed with her initials, MW. That was all the confirmation I needed. It wasn't negligence, it was willful misconduct. I organized everything into a digital report and sent copies to Dr. Singh and the Environmental Health Office, attaching my own affidavit. Every file had metadata, geolocation tags, and timestamps. Lauren leaned over my shoulder, reading each line. "You're building a case better than most detectives," she said. "I'm not building it," I replied. "I'm handing it over." Still, something in me knew it wasn't enough to wait. People like Marjorie didn't crumble quietly. They twisted, deflected, spun stories until truth looked like overreaction. If I wanted this to end cleanly, I needed to make sure the inspectors saw everything firsthand, and that meant controlling the narrative before she could rewrite it. That afternoon, I stopped by the clubhouse under the pretense of paying my fines. Marjorie was there, of course, standing behind the front desk in her signature white polo and gold HOA badge. The place smelled faintly of disinfectant, her perfume of power. "Mr. Rowe," she said smoothly, "you've decided to resolve your account issues, I hope." "Actually," I said, "I came to return something." Her eyebrows lifted. "Return?" I placed a small envelope on the counter. Inside was a printed copy of my formal request to the Department of Environmental Health, stamped, dated, and signed. "You'll be receiving a visit tomorrow morning from state inspectors. You might want to review your safety protocols before they arrive." Her smile faltered just enough to expose the crack beneath. "I'm sure they'll find everything in order," she said. "I'm sure they won't." The silence between us stretched, taut as wire. For the first time since we moved here, she didn't have a scripted response. Her fingers tapped against the desk, slow and measured. "You've made a mistake, Mr. Rowe," she said finally. "You think this is about chemicals, but it's about trust. You've turned this community against itself." "No," I said. "You did that when you weaponized a pool against a child." Her face hardened, the charm slipping away completely. "You should know," she said coldly. "I have friends in the city. People who don't take kindly to false reports. It would be unfortunate if this backfired on you." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. I just met her stare long enough for her to see what she'd missed since the beginning. This wasn't about power anymore. It was about evidence, and I already had it. When I got home, Lauren was on the porch, phone pressed to her ear. "They moved up the inspection window," she said after hanging up. "Early morning arrival, state car and local escort." "Perfect," I said. "She won't have time to stage anything." That night I made one last call, to Ben. He sounded exhausted but resolute. "I'm in," he said. "I'll tell them everything, the falsified reports, the bleach orders, all of it." "You're doing the right thing," I told him. "I hope so," he whispered, "because she called me 3 times tonight. Said if I stay loyal, she'll make sure my job's safe." "She can't promise that anymore," I said. "Not after tomorrow." I spent the rest of the night at my desk, labeling hard copies, printing duplicate sets, sealing them in folders. Every piece of evidence, every photo, every log entry was laid out like a blueprint for collapse. By dawn, I was ready. As the first light crept through the blinds, Lauren holstered her badge and looked at me. "You realize once this starts, there's no going back." I nodded. "That's the point." She smiled faintly, tired but proud. "Then let's make sure she falls on record." Outside, the sprinklers clicked on, misting the manicured lawns in a soft chemical fog. I watched the droplets catch the sunrise and thought about how much bleach it took to make everything look perfect. Tomorrow, that illusion would burn away, and truth would finally sting the way it was supposed to. The morning of the inspection broke sharp and clean, sunlight spilling across the rooftops of Lakeshore Reserve like a spotlight no one wanted. By the time I stepped outside, 2 state-marked vehicles were parked at the end of the cul-de-sac. white SUVs with blue decals reading Environmental Health Division. A third car, unmarked but familiar, rolled in seconds later. Lauren stepped out in uniform, crisp and calm, her expression unreadable. "Dr. Singh's team is here," she said, adjusting her badge. "They've got everything they need. Testing kits, collection vials, cameras. Just make sure you stay out of their way unless asked." "I know the drill," I said. It's her turn to answer questions now. Across the street, Marjorie Whittaker was already waiting by the pool gate, wearing her trademark sunglasses and a bright coral blazer that screamed defiance. Two other board members hovered behind her, unsure whether to stand close or keep their distance. The inspectors approached with quiet professionalism, clipboards in hand, voices low but firm. I followed at a distance, far enough not to interfere, but close enough to witness. Dr. Singh greeted Marjorie with the kind of politeness that always comes before dismantling someone's illusion of control. "Good morning, Ms. Whittaker. I'm Dr. Raj Singh with the State Department of Environmental Health. We received a complaint about potential chemical mismanagement at this facility." Marjorie's smile was all teeth. "A misunderstanding, I assure you. We take safety very seriously here." Dr. Singh nodded. "That's what we're here to confirm." They began immediately, testing water samples from multiple depths, collecting filter residue, photographing storage areas. I watched as the first sample strip darkened to a near black shade, far beyond the safe range. The inspector's brows furrowed. Another test. Same result. Marjorie noticed too. "Your kits must be faulty," she said quickly. "We've maintained consistent readings for months." Dr. Singh looked up. "May I see those records?" Her composure slipped for the first time. "They're in the office. I'll have my maintenance worker retrieve them." Ben appeared from the side gate, moving slowly, face pale but determined. I could tell he hadn't slept, but there was something in his eyes, resolve mixed with dread. "I've got them," he said, holding a clipboard. He didn't look at her. "Thank you," Dr. Singh said, taking the documents. "And you are?" "Ben Carter," he replied. "Maintenance and chemical operations." Marjorie's tone turned sharp. "An employee of the HOA, which means you'll let me handle communication." But Ben didn't stop. "Actually, Dr. Singh," he said, voice trembling at first but growing steadier. "Those records were edited. The numbers aren't real. She made me copy the same chlorine levels every week." The words hung in the air like a dropped weapon. Marjorie turned on him, voice rising. "Ben, think about what you're saying. You're tired, confused. You've been under pressure?" He cut her off. "I'm tired of lying. You had me dump undiluted bleach into the tanks before inspections. You said it would keep insurance happy. I've got the real logs at home, and I brought copies." He pulled a folded sheet from his back pocket and handed it to Dr. Singh. My chest tightened as I watched the exchange, the final link in the chain. Dr. Singh scanned the page, then looked directly at Marjorie. "These are dangerous levels, Ms. Whittaker. This isn't maintenance, it's contamination." Lauren stepped forward now, her tone even but official. "Ma'am, I need you to step away from the pool gate. This area is now under state supervision." Marjorie's mask cracked. "This is a setup. That man," she pointed straight at me, "has been harassing me for weeks. He's manipulating my staff, forging evidence." "Save it," Lauren said. "Everything from this moment is on record." Dr. Singh motioned to his team, who began sealing containers and tagging evidence bags. "We'll also need access to your storage and administrative records," he added. Marjorie looked around for support, but the board members behind her had already stepped back, distancing themselves like rats abandoning a sinking ship. Ben stood frozen, hands at his sides, chest heaving. I met his eyes and gave the smallest nod. Acknowledgement, not triumph. He'd done what no one else dared to. Dr. Singh turned to me briefly. "Mr. Rowe, your documentation was accurate. Thank you for your cooperation." Marjorie's voice broke then, brittle and desperate. "You'll all regret this," she said. But no one answered. Lauren moved closer, lowering her voice. "She's finished. The samples alone are enough to trigger a criminal referral." The wind picked up across the pool, carrying that faint sting of chlorine one last time. It didn't smell like power anymore. It smelled like consequence. I looked at Ben, still trembling but standing tall now. "You did the right thing," I said quietly. He nodded once. "Maybe, but it shouldn't have taken this long." The inspectors packed up their kits, the blue state seals glinting in the sunlight. Behind them, Marjorie stood alone by the water that had once been her throne. And for the first time since we moved here, the reflection in that pool wasn't just clear, it was honest. The next 48 hours unfolded like an aftershock. Marjorie Whittaker had always controlled the tempo of life in Lakeshore Reserve. Every rumor, every violation, every whisper of power. But now she was the one being whispered about. The inspectors left their tape across the pool gate, bright yellow against the white stucco, reading, "Unsafe for public use, under investigation." To everyone else, it looked like a formality. To me, it looked like the end of her kingdom. I spent that evening in my office cataloging everything for the state's follow-up report. The evidence logs, Ben's statement, the original readings, all of it was secured. Lauren came in halfway through, her uniform still on, her hair pulled back in the same tight bun she wore when she meant business. "You know," she said, setting a file on my desk, "the HOA called the precinct this afternoon, claimed you were running an online smear campaign against the board." I laughed under my breath. "Of course they did. Desperation's just arrogance wearing a new suit." Lauren sat across from me, her tone turning serious. "Ethan, I've seen people like her before. They don't surrender. They self-destruct. You need to be ready for that." "I'm counting on it," I said, "because when she burns herself down, everyone will finally see what was fueling the fire." The next morning, the neighborhood looked different. Kids weren't riding bikes near the clubhouse anymore. Parents whispered by mailboxes. Someone had taped a printout of the inspection notice to the HOA bulletin board, and by noon, a small crowd had gathered to read it. That's when I realized how quickly fear can change direction. For years, Marjorie's authority had kept people quiet. Now, it made them question every rule they'd ever followed. By afternoon, my inbox was filling with anonymous tips, photos, screenshots, messages from residents who'd been fined for absurd violations. Flower colors, door wreaths, lawn edges. She'd humiliated them all in the name of community standards. One message stood out. "You're not the first family she's targeted. Last year, a kid got chemical burns, too. His parents moved away quietly after signing an NDA. I forwarded that to Dr. Singh, adding, "Request additional scope for investigation." Then I closed my laptop and stared out the window. The sun reflected off the still water of the lake, blinding for a second. For the first time in months, I felt something close to peace. But it didn't last long. At 3:17 p.m., Lauren called from her patrol car. "She's hosting an emergency meeting," she said. "Right now, clubhouse lobby, claims she's been cleared of wrongdoing." "She hasn't even received the full report yet," I said. "Exactly, which means she's about to lie. Get down there." The clubhouse was packed when I arrived. Half the neighborhood squeezed into that glass-walled space, the air heavy with chlorine and tension. Marjorie stood at the front behind a folding table, papers spread like armor. Her coral blazer was gone. Today she wore white, spotless, as if purity were still something she could fake. "Let's begin," she said into the microphone. "As you may have heard, there was a misunderstanding regarding pool maintenance. I want to assure everyone that the matter is resolved. The state found no deliberate wrongdoing." That lie cracked through the crowd like thunder. Murmurs rose, confusion blending with disbelief. I stepped forward. "That's not true." Her head snapped toward me. "Mr. Rowe, this is a closed meeting for residents in good standing." "I'm in good standing," I said, "and I have the official correspondence to prove your statement false." Gasps rippled as I pulled a printed letter from my folder. The acknowledgement from Environmental Health, confirming ongoing investigation and temporary suspension of HOA pool operations. I held it high enough for everyone to see. "You're under review for falsified maintenance records, misuse of hazardous materials, and endangerment of minors. That's what this says." For the first time, she lost her words. Then, in a desperate pivot, she sneered. "This man's family fabricated evidence. His wife used her badge to intimidate me." Lauren's voice cut through from the back of the room. "Careful, Ms. Whittaker. You're accusing a law enforcement officer on record." The crowd parted as Lauren walked forward, calm and authoritative, her badge catching the fluorescent light. The shift in energy was immediate. Whispers turned into stares, not at Lauren, but at Marjorie. Dr. Singh's assistant stepped in next, unannounced but perfectly timed. "I'm with Environmental Health," she said, producing her credentials. We're here to collect remaining administrative materials as part of the ongoing audit. The color drained from Marjorie's face. She stammered something about protocol and privacy, but no one cared anymore. The room had already chosen its side. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I just watched as the illusion she'd built began to fracture in public view. One neighbor raised a hand hesitantly. "Ms. Whitaker," he said, "did you really spray a child with bleach?" That question hung in the air like smoke after an explosion. She didn't answer. She couldn't. When the inspector collected the keys to the pool gate, it was more than an administrative action. It was the quiet transfer of power. Lauren leaned toward me, voice low. "Tomorrow, she's finished." I nodded. "No," I said. "Tonight she's exposed. Tomorrow's just paperwork." The following evening, the board scheduled an open forum in the community hall, what was supposed to be a calm discussion about next steps. But word had spread fast. By the time I arrived, the parking lot overflowed, and residents were spilling into the grass, murmuring into tight clusters. The pool lights glowed faintly in the distance, still cordoned off with yellow tape like a crime scene. Lauren walked beside me, hand resting near her badge, not as a threat but as quiet insurance against chaos. Inside, the air was thick and restless. Folding chairs filled the hall, neighbors pressed shoulder to shoulder. A portable microphone screeched to life as Marjorie Whitaker stepped onto the stage, clutching a folder thick with papers. She ditched her signature coral for gray, neutral, polished, damage control. "Good evening," she began, her tone brittle but composed. "I called this meeting to address the false narratives circulating online and within our community. Certain individuals have spread misinformation about our HOA's safety practices, damaging our reputation and property values." A few claps rose from the front row, but they sounded hesitant, uncertain. Most people stayed quiet. Marjorie continued, forcing a smile. "Let me be clear. The state inspection found minor irregularities, nothing more. The pool will reopen shortly. Our focus should be unity, not division." I stood at the back, watching her performance. It was almost impressive, the way she clung to authority, even as it crumbled beneath her. Lauren glanced at me. "You ready?" "Yeah," I said, stepping forward. Halfway down the aisle, I spoke loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's not what the state report says." The room turned toward me as I walked to the front. Marjorie's smile froze. "Mr. Rowe, please sit down. You've already disrupted enough meetings." I ignored her, facing the crowd. "You all deserve the truth. The Environmental Health Division confirmed excessive chemical contamination, 15 times above legal limit. That's not a minor irregularity. That's criminal negligence." A ripple of whispers cut through the hall. Someone from the back shouted, "Is that true?" I held up the printed report, stamped and signed by Dr. Singh himself. "This came in this morning. It's public record now." Marjorie's voice cracked. "This is harassment. You're twisting the facts to make me look like some kind of villain," I said quietly. "You sprayed bleach at a child, Marjorie. You falsified safety data. You endangered families to protect your ego." Gasps erupted from the audience. Lauren's presence behind me steadied, the room, her uniform anchoring the chaos. Marjorie slammed her folder on the table. "You're lying! That girl wasn't injured. She had a rash. The doctor said it himself." Lauren stepped forward, her tone cold and professional. "That's not what the medical report says, and you know it. The report's attached to the police record, the same one you tried to suppress." The hall went silent. Even the air conditioner seemed to pause. Then Ben stood up from the second row, hands trembling, but voice clear. "She's lying. I mixed the chemicals. I signed the logs. She told me to make the numbers look stable. I brought the real reports to the inspectors myself." The crowd erupted, voices overlapping, disbelief, anger, vindication, all blending together. Someone shouted, "You put our kids in that pool!" Another yelled, "She needs to resign!" Marjorie turned on Ben, eyes wild. "You ungrateful coward! I gave you that job!" He flinched but didn't back down, and I almost lost my soul keeping it. Lauren raised a hand, commanding silence. "Everyone, calm down. This meeting is now an official public proceeding under state oversight. Any further threats or outbursts will be recorded as obstruction." I stepped closer to Marjorie's table. The papers in her folder were shaking in her hands now. "You built your authority on fear," I said. You fined people, humiliated them, bullied them, and called it order. But order without accountability isn't safety, it's tyranny. She tried to speak, but the microphone picked up only static. The weight of the room was crushing now. Dozens of eyes, quiet judgment, years of resentment surfacing at once. From the doorway, Dr. Singh entered with two other inspectors, holding official documents. He spoke clearly. Marjorie Whitaker, per Section 42 of the State Health and Safety Code, you are hereby prohibited from overseeing or managing any community facility pending further legal review. The words landed like a verdict. The crowd broke into scattered applause, muted at first, then rising like thunder. Marjorie's face went pale. You can't do this. I am this community. Lauren met her gaze. Not anymore. For a long moment, no one moved. Then she dropped the microphone and walked out, shoulders rigid, refusing to look back. As the applause faded, Ben sat down heavily, burying his face in his hands. Lauren put a hand on his shoulder. You did the right thing, she said. I turned to the neighbors watching me, some teary, some stunned. It's over, I said quietly. No more fear, no more lies. It's time this neighborhood actually lived up to its name. Outside, the last of the sunset reflected off the sealed pool, the yellow tape fluttering like a warning, and a promise that the water would stay still until it was finally safe again. By the next morning, Lakeshore Reserve didn't feel like the same place. The air was quieter, lighter somehow, as if the neighborhood had exhaled after years of holding its breath. The pool gate was still sealed, the yellow tape fluttering gently in the breeze, but now it stood as a symbol of something reclaimed rather than something forbidden. For the first time, people walked past it without fear of being fined, reported, or humiliated. They lingered, they talked, and they looked at one another like neighbors again instead of subjects under rule. Lauren and I stood by the lake, coffee cups in hand, watching the early fog roll off the water. You realize she's probably still trying to file complaints somewhere, she said. Her type doesn't go down quietly. I know, I replied, but she's not filing them from behind that desk anymore, and this time, the state's not listening to her. It's investigating her. Lauren smiled faintly. You did it right, Ethan. No shouting, no threats, just truth and proof. You didn't beat her by fighting fire with fire. You let her burn herself out. That line stuck with me. She was right. I didn't win by outmaneuvering her. I won by showing everyone how far she'd go to stay powerful. The difference between authority and accountability had finally become impossible to ignore. Ben joined us a few minutes later, looking more rested than I'd ever seen him. His kids trailed behind him, laughing as they chased each other along the dock. He nodded to me, quiet gratitude in his eyes. Inspectors cleared me yesterday, he said. Said my cooperation saved the investigation weeks of work. They even offered me a job maintaining municipal facilities downtown. That's good news, I said, shaking his hand. You earned it? He hesitated. You think they'll ever reopen the pool? Eventually, I said, but this time, it'll be done right. We walked together to the clubhouse, where the remnants of last night's meeting were still scattered, papers, empty chairs, and a microphone lying on its side. The walls echoed with ghosts of her voice, the one that had dictated everyone's daily life for so long. Now it was gone, and the silence was beautiful. By noon, residents had already gathered outside, forming small committees to discuss interim leadership. A woman named Carol, who'd been fined for hanging wind chimes last year, took the lead. We're forming a resident safety committee, she announced. No more closed-door decisions, no more intimidation. Someone asked if I'd consider joining. I told them no, my fight was done. You don't need another enforcer, I said. You need balance. People like Ben, people who actually care about keeping things safe, not controlled. Lauren slipped her arm through mine as the crowd began to disperse. So, what now? She asked. Now? I looked back at the pool, sunlight glinting off the still water behind the caution tape. Now we make sure it never happens again. And maybe we finally take Ava swimming somewhere that doesn't smell like bleach. She laughed softly. She'll like that. Later that evening, as the sun dipped low and the neighborhood lights flickered on, I walked to the pool one last time. The reflection of the tape shimmered across the surface, gold against blue. I thought about everything that had happened, the burns on my daughter's arms, the endless fines, the lies. It had started as a fight for fairness, but ended as something bigger, a fight for accountability. Marjorie Whittaker's arrest warrant had gone public earlier that day. Reckless endangerment, falsification of safety records, and obstruction of a state investigation. Her mugshot was already circulating online, shared by residents who once feared even saying her name. Justice didn't always roar. Sometimes it whispered through court filings and inspection reports. But this time, everyone heard it. I took a photo of the pool and sent it to Lauren with one line: "It's finally clean." Then I posted the same photo to the neighborhood board with a short message: "Transparency begins today." The comments flooded in. Thank yous, apologies, relief. Even those who'd once defended her admitted they'd known something was wrong, but were too afraid to speak. Fear had ruled this place for years. Truth had finally set it free. As the last light faded over the lake, Ava came running up the path, holding her floaties in one hand. "Daddy," she said, "can we swim tomorrow?" "Not here," I told her, smiling, "but somewhere better, somewhere clean." She nodded, content with that answer, and skipped off toward the porch where Lauren waited. I stood alone for a moment, listening to the sound of water lapping against the tiles, the echoes of laughter returning to a neighborhood that finally remembered what peace felt like. If you want more stories of homeowners standing up to HOA tyranny, hit subscribe right now, share your story in the comments, and let me know where you're watching from.